everyone, and welcome to the Arthritis Action Podcast. My name is Mark. I'm the area coordinator for the charity and also your host. Joining me on today's episode is one of our trustees, Sarah Vickerstaff. How are you, Sarah?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. So today's topic is an interesting one, and maybe one that's like far less specific than some of the others we've done. It's called What I Wish I'd Known About Arthritis, which I think should make for quite an interesting conversation. So let's kick it off with you though, Sarah. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your arthritis as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm an academic, so I've worked in universities for most of my working life. I'm a sociologist. So I've had a job where I spend a lot of time sitting down, which I think has probably been both a blessing and a curse. I now have a stand-up, sit-down desk, and I probably should have had one of those 30 years ago. Arthritis started to be an issue for me in my late 30s, early 40s. And that was when I first heard kind of the word arthritis in relation to my own health. And that was specifically about my hands.
Okay, so when were you diagnosed?
Well, whenever I was 40 or thereabouts, so that's 26 years ago. Somebody else can do the math.
Okay, yeah. Not me. I'm not going to do it.
And yes, I was having problems with my hands, and my index finger on my right hand was very swollen and painful. And if anyone has problems with their hands, they know just one finger being a bit out of kilter, and it really affects your whole hand. So I was seeing people about that, and I remember very specifically being sent for an X-ray and being asked by the person doing the X-ray, "Oh, have you injured your hand?" And I said, because that's what was being X-rayed, and I said, "Oh no, I haven't injured it, but we think it's probably arthritis." And she looked at me and she said, "Oh no, it won't be arthritis, not at your age." And I think that's probably, I mean, I wasn't that young, I was 40 thereabouts, but I think that's probably quite a common experience for people. And then, of course, 10 minutes later, after she'd looked at the X-ray, she said, "Yes, yeah, I think it is. I think it is arthritis." So yeah, that was the beginning.
I mean, that's one of those very common misconceptions as well, isn't it? That like you're too young to have arthritis or anything like that. I mean, as we've had on this podcast already, about some people in like their 30s, like as you were when you were diagnosed as well.
Yeah.
So like there's no set age for it.
Indeed. And it's a bit demoralising to be sort of told, "Oh no, it won't be arthritis," when you're fairly sure that that's exactly what it is.
What do you wish you'd known when you were first diagnosed? I mean, did they tell you at first like what type of arthritis it was, or?
No, I think I then had some other tests and it was determined as osteoarthritis. No, I mean, it was very much, well, you've got that, there you are, it's in your hands. It's probably hereditary. And I could think back, I mean, both my parents were dead at that time, but I could think back to the fact that, they both had dodgy hands, as it were. And indeed, my brother, who was still alive at the time, did as well. So, but there wasn't any sort of discussion about, well, this could be the start of having osteoarthritis in other joints.
So did you think that's something you'd wish you'd had at the start, was like more of a conversation?
I think it would have been helpful. I mean, not a heavy number, because, I mean, someone might have arthritis in the hand. It could be related to an injury or something, and that might be where it begins and ends. But for a lot of people, actually, they will go on to have arthritis in other joints. And just to have been pointed towards a bit of information about that, I think would have been helpful at that point.
Have you had arthritis in other parts as well now then, or is it just?
Oh yeah, I think that the technical phrase might be riddled with it. Yes, I have arthritis in my knees, in my back, in my hands, in my feet. And my ankles, and I think my shoulder might be going. I think my shoulder is the next candidate for dysfunction.
How has arthritis changed your life then?
Well, it's certainly, I mean, I've had major back surgery, and I've got 2 metal knees. I mean, in the last 10 years or so, I have had a lot of surgery, all of which has been tremendously successful. But obviously, you know, that is an interruption. And before you get to the point of having surgery, you know, you're often quite debilitated before you get to that point. And I do feel, I mean, immense sympathy for people out there on waiting lists at the moment for hips and knees and things. I mean, I know what that's like to sort of need an operation and it not to be quite coming as quickly. So yes, I've had mobility problems across the years, which have then got better as I've had surgery for something and then got worse again. I suppose you learn to adjust, as I said earlier. The fact that I do a job where I'm often sat down helps. I mean, if I'd have been a shop worker or a cleaner or someone on my feet for an 8-hour shift, I probably would have had to give up working in my 50s because I couldn't do that now. I think it's also made me very, very aware of the need to use it or lose it, if you like.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of that mantra as well. It's something I rabbit on a lot about.
Yeah, it's really important. And I think I could be and indeed a physio said this to me only last week. He sort of said, well, Sarah, think what you will be like if you didn't do all the things that you do. You know, I go on my exercise bike to sort of warm my legs and knees up. I do Tai Chi, which is very good for balance and breathing. I have a trainer, so I do some weights. I do lots of stretching and bending. And I've just had to build that into my life, really, as a regular thing I do. And sometimes you sort of think, well, it would be nice to just get up and not have to do any of that. But actually, even people who haven't got osteoarthritis or any other kind of arthritis should be exercising as much as they can in whatever way they like, whether it's swimming or running or weights or going to a Pilates class or whatever. It doesn't really matter what it is, does it? It's
no.
the habit of doing exercise. But for me, certainly in the last 10, 15 years, it's become a critical part of my life, and I'm wedded to my Fitbit. Other brands of tracker are available, you know, which tells me whether. And I got it after my first total knee operation.
Okay.
Because I thought, well, I'm going to have to walk because, you know, if you do have a knee replacement, how successful it is really a lot down to you. I mean, you're going to probably have a very decent surgeon who will do a decent job. Then how good that knee is how quickly you get up and start walking and doing the physio and keep doing it. So I kind of thought, well, let's get a fitness tracker, because then I can, you know, set myself step goals and, you know, build that into what I was doing. And I've become very, very wedded to it over the years.
Excellent. They are definitely a good way and they work well for a lot of people. But one thing I was wondering, you mentioned how, like, before actually two questions really for you. The first was, like, how did you get to that point when you decided that you were going to have surgery? Because I've spoken to so many people where, like, they're always teetering on the edge of, like, do I do it or do I, like, try and do it another way, like either through, like, you know, sort of like some fitness, doing more sort of therapies, or do I just go the whole way and do the surgery? So how did you get to that point?
Well, I mean, with my back, because my hands were quite bad, you know, been quite bad throughout, really. But with my back, which was getting steadily worse, I mean, I did try everything. I mean, you know, diet, acupuncture, which I really liked, but had absolutely no effect on my arthritis. I used to love it. I used to go and get the needles put in and I'd fall asleep. It was a very nice way to spend lunchtime, actually. But he sort of said, well, really, you know, I'm saying don't come back because I'm not having an impact on it.
With that, I always find things like those therapies very interesting, because some are incredibly useful for some and some don't work at all for others. So it's about finding the one that works best for you.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's absolutely right, Mark. I mean, I'm sure some people would find, I mean, as I say, I liked acupuncture, but it wasn't having an impact on my joints. So yes, I did all of those sorts of things, trying to find ways, exercise. Well, I've been doing Tai Chi for 30 odd years, so carrying on doing that. But it was just getting steadily worse. And for anyone out there with back problems, they will know that there are a lot of gatekeepers in the NHS, sort of between you and the consultant who might eventually sort it out if surgery is required. I mean, you'll see, you'll probably be sent to a pain clinic. You'll probably see an extended scope physio or something. You might be offered injections of one sort or another. So there's all of those sort of things to go through. And finally, you get to the point where someone, looks at you, stagger into their clinic, and sort of says, "Well, actually, I think you need surgery." So I think it was that sort of a journey, but it was a long journey, and I wasn't easy to walk by the time I got to that point. I had a stick, and I could really only walk for sort of 200, 300 yards, and then I'd have to stop and rest a moment and then go on again. So I was in a relatively bad way, if you like. And I remember so strongly sort of sitting there on the morning of the surgery for my back thinking, right, I finally got to this point after all this time. And then it sort of hit me that actually, rather than it being the end of something, it was actually the beginning.
It's a really good outlook to have on things. I know it's easier said than done to go over that, but it's so valuable if you can actually start to look at things like that.
Yeah, so I just kind of thought, and it was a light bulb moment as I was waiting for the anaesthetist to come and talk to me. And my knee had been giving me problems, but they were sort of saying, look, your back's far more serious, and we need to sort your back out, and then we can address your knee after that. So I mean, I got to the point where I was facing not walking or having back surgery. So for me, it was a no-brainer, and it was very, very successful. It was sort of decompression and then fusion, if people know what that is. But so it's a big operation, but it was very, very successful.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Which leads me on to my second question, actually, was how prepared were you for the operation? So did you do much prep work for it, or were we already kind of doing it? So it sounds like you were doing lots of exercise already.
Yes. Well, I was for that one, but also after that, especially for both knees. I mean, I'm very lucky that I've had a trainer throughout all this period, going back to about 2004, who knows the eccentricities of my joints very well, and has always been very good at sort of targeting stretches or weight exercises or whatever it is to what's going on for me at the time. And I don't quite know where it came from. Probably it was talking to my trainer about it. I realised that the fittest you could be going into surgery, that the better you would feel afterwards, and probably the better the outcome would be. So before my back surgery, I spent quite a lot of time trying to improve core stability, on the grounds that if I, so the sort of stuff you do on Swiss balls, sort of scrunches up and down, things like that. I mean, I don't do them very well. I'm making it sound like I'm really good at this stuff. I'm not, but, doing that sort of stuff to kind of, and with knees doing, and I still do this now, lots of work on quads and calves and, just if the muscles around whatever joint it is that's going a bit haywire are as strong as they could be, or at least as strong as you can get them, then that's going to help you massively, because you're taking the pressure off the joint, and you're making the muscles do their job. And I think I understood that before the back surgery, but when it came to both knees, being done, I was very much in that frame of mind. So again, seeing surgery as a process. Yeah. We kind of think of it as an event. Oh, I'm having this done. I've got this problem. Having this done, then I'll be all right. And that's really, I think, not a very good way to think about surgery. It's really a process. It's about how you prepare yourself for it. Then they'll do some fancy work of some sort, which will really, make a big difference. But then you've got to work on that afterwards as well. So I think thinking of it like that is really helpful. And I learned that through the back operation, and I take that forward for the other things that I've had done.
That's a really good way of looking at it. I really like that. I might have to pinch that and use that when I'm trying to explain
feel
things to
free. Feel free.
I steal so many things from these. It makes me sound so wise at other times. Don't worry, you'll get all the credit though. Don't worry.
No. Quick learning's always good.
That was actually the next thing I was going to sort of come on to after that. Do you feel like you're still learning new things about arthritis, and in particular your arthritis, like as time goes on?
Yeah, I think so. Partly because it starts to affect other bits. So, I've been thinking a lot about feet lately. I've had more problems with my feet recently than I have done. So that's led me to do some sort of research, and Arthritis Action had a really good webinar on feet, which, I thought was great.
Webinar can be accessed via our website, should anyone wish to have a look at that.
Yeah, as well. I know. I highly recommend it. Very useful. And I think as well, of course, the surgery, the medicines. I mean, I don't really take anything for my arthritis. I occasionally take anti-inflammatories if it gets really bad, but I generally don't. But all of that's improving all the time. I mean, I've got an implant in my thumb, which is a very new technique. Instead of having a trapeziectomy, which is where the bone gets taken out at the bottom of your thumb, instead of taking the bone out, they can now slip this implant, a bit like a lens, that you would have for instead of glasses. Can't think what they're called.
A contact lens.
Contact lens, yeah. A bit like a contact lens type of thing, which is slipped in around the joint in the thumb. So, the techniques and what's available are changing all the time, because, for example, there's now really good longitudinal data about knee replacements that sort of says probably most of them will last up to 25 years. Now, when I had my first one, even, that's kind of coming on for about 10 years ago now, at that time it was sort of, well, it should last at least 10 years. And they were very worried about doing them for people under 60 because they were worried about having to do multiple, the more data they have, the more people like me out there that have had all these things done, we're providing information that sort of says these things are lasting longer than people perhaps thought, but also the techniques are all getting better in surgery. So I think it's really, there's always more to learn, and not just sort of academic learning, kind of going away and reading articles or something, but also, learning from other people. One of the great webinars I went to, I think it might have been you, Mark, that ran it, about AIDS. Yes. What aids do people use? I thought that was really fascinating, and I learned a few things. And I have things I use, to get the lids off things, and other people had canny little things for getting ring pulls up, and so you can learn a lot from other people with arthritis, because we're all finding workarounds, we're all finding ways of managing our conditions. So keep abreast of new techniques and things that are going out there, but also talk to other people about what works for them.
What's been the biggest learning curve or challenge for you?
I think sort of not being able to race around at the pace that I would normally like to go. And obviously when I've been waiting to have a knee replaced or before the back or whatever, then you do sort of slow right down when your mobility is affected. And that can be quite frustrating. I don't think it stopped me doing very much, but I think it does. And I do have occasional days. This is something that isn't so we don't talk about the mental health aspects so much. I mean, Arthritis Action is very good on this, but also just the sort of fatigue elements. I don't think anyone's ever, in a medical setting, ever talked to me about fatigue. I mean, I'm now semi-retired, so actually, this is not so much of an issue. But when I still work full time, I would from time to time have days where I was just completely wiped out, and I would sort of think, well, what's the matter with me? I haven't done anything unusual. Why am I so tired? And then someone, again, going back to this talk to other people with arthritis, a friend with arthritis said, duh, you've got, chronic osteoarthritis, all over. Yeah, you get tired,
Sometimes you need people to point the stuff out to you, though, to be honest.
Exactly.
It's not always as obvious as afterwards you might think that, of course, that was stupid of me not to think that. But
Exactly. So I think, I get a bit frustrated by that. And sometimes with my hands, there's more that could be done with my hands. I'm just having a bit of a rest before go back in to think about having more surgery or anything. But, sometimes I can't pick things up. I've scissors, for example, I find really difficult to use scissors now. So I've got lots of those objects with great big handles that make things easier. But those sorts of things just, if you're a bit tired, if you're a little bit fed up, those are the things that just sort of really, make you sort of think, why have I got this condition? And it's,
What do you do about it in those situations when you're having those days? How do you kind of get through them?
Well, I think I've given myself permission to just have the odd day where I'm wiped out and I really don't do very much. And I've just sort of given myself the permission to do that rather than sort of thinking, oh no, don't be such a wimp, get up, start steaming around. That actually, if I really do, it's easier when you're semi-retired, obviously. I just think, no, I'm going to have a day where I don't really do very much today. And actually, you feel better as a result. Otherwise, do things that you like doing. I mean, I love gardening, which I am finding more and more difficult. But pottering about in the garden, out in the fresh air, doing a bit of this and a bit of that, generally lifts my mood. It's a distraction. I enjoy it. I see things, that I might want to change. So it's kind of creative in its own way. So, I used to do a lot of swimming. Don't do so much swimming now, obviously, COVID and all of that, lockdown. I got out of the habit of swimming. But I know a lot of people with arthritis find swimming very good because it's non-load bearing and all the rest of it. So I think everyone's got something. That's what I used to say to my students sometimes when they were stressed out about their exams. I would sort of say, well, what do you like doing? Don't think about work for a moment. And they'd sort of say, well, I like to go for a run, or I like to go for a walk, or I like swimming, or play football, or I like going to the cinema, or whatever it was. I said, well, just, stop revising this afternoon and go out and do that. I go, I can't, yes, you can.
People are far too worried about not doing stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Because as you said, you're just giving yourself permission to have that day off. That's so hard for so many people to do because everyone feels like they have to be doing something all the time. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it can make such a huge difference, especially to if you just take that time for yourself and do something.
Yeah,
it can have an effect on your body as well, because if it relaxes you and chills you out, your body kind of will thank you for that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a kind of distractor factor, and what will do it for one person won't be the same as the next. But I think pretty much everyone's got something that will, distract them and take their minds off things. It might be phoning up someone, and having a nice conversation on Zoom or something. Whatever it is, doesn't matter really what it is.
Definitely. Excellent. So just a couple more bits before we wrap up today. So how has Arthritis Action helped you personally?
Well, it's helped me hugely. I mean, I joined in 2014, and I think, I can't remember now I think that was just before I had my first knee replacement. And I'd sort of been vaguely aware of it, but I actually went and found it online and read up about it and things. And I think it's really helpful because a really important message to people is you're not alone. There's hundreds, thousands of other people out there with arthritis and the kind of arthritis you've got. I mean, some are much rarer, but still. Yeah. And you can learn all sorts of things. So, I mean, I just found that sense of being part of something with other people really, really valuable. It didn't necessarily mean that, I mean, I wasn't particularly active in going to sort of meetings or anything, but it was sort of there. And I thought, well, I can look things up, or I can pose questions, or I can get involved in one thing or another. And I think that is really valuable, because you don't have the time or the expertise to kind of research everything you might want to know about what condition you've got. So, I mean, Arthritis Action and all the resources on the website provide a really, handy, somebody else has digested all that information, and it is providing you with the sort of shorthand, what you need to know about something. So I think all of that is really great. And then I think, it wasn't the best of circumstances, but I think the lockdown has invigorated the sort of webinar side of things.
There's certainly been positives from it, because we've added more services. There's more stuff that we do now. We've sort of kept a lot of the old stuff as well.
And I think they're great, again, because, you will hear other people, experiencing the same things as you. They might have, like we're talking about the gadgets and things, they might have handy little tips, which are really great to hear. Or, you might be, I remember that I was involved in one on surgery. You might be facing some surgery, and it might be the first surgery you've had. And quite rightly, you're a bit worried about it. You're a bit anxious about it. You want to know how it's gonna go, and the resources that you can get through Arthritis Action or by talking to people, is really helpful. You don't have to go, you don't have to suffer in silence on your own. There's a whole community out there of resources and of people that you can learn from and share with, and that for me is massively helpful.
And final question for you, I like to end on. So what advice would you give to someone who's been recently diagnosed with arthritis, or even like a younger you? What advice would you give?
Well, join Arthritis Action, obviously.
Of course, always.
Because you can be involved with it on, all sorts of levels. You might just use it as an information resource, or you might get involved in groups, or you might get involved in webinars, or you might use some of the pathways or the subsidized treatments or whatever. So get involved in Arthritis Action. And then I think the other thing I would say is use it or lose it. Exercise, and we're not, I go on my exercise bike every morning. If I'm at home, I go on it for 20 minutes when I first get up. I mean, I'm not going to win any peloton races on that bike. I'm not steaming away. I'm just kind of waking my knees and my legs up, because you're stiff when you first get out of bed if you've got arthritis, and that's just part of my routine now. That is just what I do. I mean, it sounds sort of, oh God, the thought of doing that sounds dreadful, doesn't it? But it's just part. I have my iPad over the thing, so I'm doing other things while I'm just, and whatever it is, going for a walk or going for a swim or doing a Pilates class or Tai Chi class or whatever. That's what I would have said to me at 40. I would have said this, and it took a little bit longer. It was more towards my late 40s that I realised I needed to exercise more. I'd have said, right, this is your warning call. This is your job now, is to think about keeping all of your joints, well, not your joints, all of your muscles, round joints, as mobilised and as strong as you can manage to make them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's great. And we've covered so much today. There's a huge amount on it. Like loads of it is available on our websites. We've mentioned already, like all the online groups, the webinars. Most of it's, free. You don't have to be a member to access most of the services that we have. But obviously, if you did want to join as a member, there's all the information on the website. You get a few extra perks and extra few bits there as well. If you'd like to check any of that out, the website address is www.arthritisaction.org.uk. And if you'd like to send us an email with any questions or suggestions or anything like that, you can send that directly to the podcast at podcast@arthritisaction.org.uk. So, thank you very much, Sarah. That's been great.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.